My name was Javier Martinez, and if you're listening to this, it means I'm already dead. I was born and raised in Mexico City, a massive metropolis full of life, but also full of shadows. Everyone says that in this city, it's easy to get lost, either through the tempting lights or the empty promises of the streets. I always considered myself above that, a logical, grounded person. I didn't believe in ghost stories, legends, or curses. But about 2 months ago, my confidence was shaken in a way no one could imagine. I worked as a lawyer specializing in corporate contracts. I gained some fame among the businessmen along Avenida Paseo de la Reforma, known for being able to make any deal happen, no matter how complicated it was. But that talent led me to cross paths with something beyond our world. It was a late night at the La Merced market. I don't usually walk around those areas after dark, but I was searching for something specific, an ancient figurine an eccentric client had requested. When I arrived at the shop where it was supposedly located, I found the doors locked and the lights off. I was about to leave, frustrated, when a man, a beggar, appeared out of nowhere. He was dressed in filthy rags, his face weathered by time and suffering, but it was his eyes that froze me. There was something wrong with them, something deep and unsettling that made me hesitate, as if he knew something I didn't. "You're looking for more than just a simple figurine, aren't you?" he murmured, his voice raspy and barely audible. I ignored him, nervous, but he continued, his voice now a whisper heavy with meaning. "You need to know about La Malahora. It's an entity you can't ignore." When he mentioned La Malahora, a sense of unease washed over me. I had never heard of it before. The beggar explained that La Malahora is an urban legend that arose in the oldest and darkest areas of Mexico City. According to popular tradition, La Malahora is an evil spirit that appears to those nearing death. The legend says that this entity manifests in the early hours of the morning, especially in deserted and ruined areas, and its presence is always preceded by a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. It's said that La Malahora is not a simple ghost. It's a force of pure evil, a personification of fear and hopelessness. Those who cross its path feel an overwhelming sense of dread, and time seems to slow down around them. It's as if the very darkness around them becomes dense and suffocating, and when the presence finally reveals itself, there's no escape. It latches onto the victim's soul and drags them to a terrible fate. The beggar handed me an address, an old alley near the Plaza de Santo Domingo, and said that was where the oldest pacts were sealed. He claimed that if I was looking for something more powerful than a simple figurine, I should go there. That night I went. I don't know why, perhaps to prove to myself that it was just another story, or maybe because something deeper, a darker curiosity, drove me there. The place was an old, crumbling building, its bricks stained by time and neglect. When I entered, the air grew heavier, as if the darkness itself was alive. The floor creaked with every step, and the silence was suffocating. Inside, I found an old man sitting behind a table with an ancient leather-bound book in front of him. "Are you ready for a real pact, Mr. Martinez?" he asked, without even lifting his head. I should have left right then. I should have walked away from it all. But I stayed. Something inside me, a force I couldn't control, kept me there. I nodded silently. He opened the book, and a stench of decay filled the air. "This pact is not like the others, Javier. La Malahora is not a common spirit. It comes to those willing to pay any price." I laughed again, thinking it was some macabre performance. But deep down, I knew there was no turning back. I signed the contract, sealing my fate. In the weeks that followed, my life seemed to change. My negotiations, which had already been good, became flawless. I made more money than I could spend, and my name echoed among the businessmen as a living miracle. But things quickly began to change. One night, coming home, I saw a strange figure. On the corner of my street, a tall silhouette, cloaked in darkness, watched me. It didn't move, just stood there still. I ignored it, thinking my imagination was playing tricks on me. But in the following nights, the same figure appeared, first distant, then on the opposite sidewalk, until one day I saw it standing at the entrance of my building. That's when I realized the nightmare had begun. From that moment on, sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard whispers. La Malahora is coming. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, certain I wasn't alone in the room. I felt an invisible presence, something watching me from the shadows, always at the edge of my vision. There was no rest. I knew something was hunting me. One night, I went to the Zocalo trying to distract myself, but even in the crowd, I saw it. In a window reflection, in the mirror of a car, always there, always watching. Chapultepec, where I used to run, became unbearable. The air there felt dead, as if all nature around me had stopped. I was being watched. Desperate, I returned to the La Merced market looking for the beggar. But he had vanished, as if he'd never existed. The building where I made the pact was in ruins, covered in dust, as if it had been abandoned for decades. And then tonight, it came. La Malahora is not just a legend. It's real, and I felt its presence invade my apartment tonight. I heard its steps, heavy and dragging, and the putrid smell of its approach filled the air. There was no more escape. Its cold hand touched my shoulder, and now, as I write this, I know it's behind me. The price for that pact was my soul. I laughed at the legends, for I was above them, but now I see they are real. And when it chooses you, there is no escape.
I never believed in urban legends. People say there are forces beyond our comprehension, that there's always a price to pay when you dare to meddle with things you shouldn't. But honestly, I always thought that was nonsense to scare kids. It was the kind of thing my parents used to keep me in line, like a demon was always lurking, ready to punish any misstep. I laughed at it for years. Now here I am in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. A beautiful, organized city with bustling markets, cobblestone streets, and the cold gleam of winter. I came here with a purpose to rise, to make something of myself. I'm ambitious. And why not? Stockholm is a city of opportunities, from the busy Östermalm market to the peace of Djurgården Park. The city is a portrait of modern perfection. But perfection is for the weak. I wanted more. It was in a bar in Gamla Stan that it all started. That bar was a relic hidden in the narrow, historic alleys. They said the building had stood since the days of the witch hunts in the 17th century. I never cared for those stories, but the details always intrigued me. While sipping my whiskey, that's when he appeared. An old man with eyes as sharp as ice and a smile that looked more like a threat than a friendly gesture. You're looking for more, aren't you? I laughed. Who isn't? He stepped closer, the faint smell of sulfur filling the air, almost imperceptible but enough to unsettle me. There's a way, an old way. Are you willing to pay the price? My arrogance blinded me. Price. If it's money, I've got enough. He smiled, his teeth gleaming in a way that made my blood freeze. Money is meaningless, but your soul. Now we're talking. I should have walked away right then. I should have left that bar, ignored the man, and moved on with my life. But I didn't, couldn't. I was drawn in, intoxicated by the promise of power, of greatness. He spoke of an ancient legend, something going back to the time of the Vikings. They say men who sought favors from demonic forces made their pacts on a small island, strip of land between Stockholm and the Baltic Sea. A forbidden island where souls were offered in exchange for greatness. Carlet Schulman, he whispered, the island of lost love, or perhaps the island of doom. That night I made the pact. The man gave me detailed instructions. I had to go to the island at midnight, during the darkest point of winter. He assured me that success was guaranteed, and the like I wanted would be within my grasp. The ritual was simple, almost too naive. A black candle, a symbol drawn on the ice. When I finished, the absolute silence settled in. No sound of water, wind, or animals. Just the beat of my own heart. And then the shadows began to move. At first, they were subtle, like an illusion. But soon, they took shape. Creatures, distorted, rising from the ground as if made of smoke and bones, with eyes that burned with a crimson glow. I tried to step back, but they surrounded me, forming a tight circle around me. Do you want power? One of them whispered, its voice sounding like 1,000 blades cutting through the air. I nodded, unable to speak. Then pay the price. I felt something inside me change. My chest burned as if something was being torn out from within. I collapsed on the ice, feeling my body being drained. But at the same time, I felt power flowing into me. Something dark, dangerous, but irresistible. The creatures dissolved into the air, leaving me alone with the echo of the cutting wind. In the days that followed, everything I touched prospered. Deals closed with absurd profits. People who once ignored me now lined up to talk to me. It was as if the world was bowing at my feet. But of course, nothing comes free. I started seeing things. At first, it was just shadows out of the corner of my eye. Then faces. Not the faces of people I knew, but something older, cooler. And then last night, I saw a reflection in a shop window in Strickland Square. But it wasn't me, or at least not just me. Something was watching me from within, something that grew with each passing day. Today, I went to the office as usual, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. But I couldn't. All of my employees stopped talking when I entered. Their stares, it was like they knew. They knew what I did, the pact I made. I tried to ignore them, but soon I realized their mouths weren't moving and their eyes were empty. That's when I understood. I was already dead. That night on the island, I didn't make a pact for power. I handed over my soul for something hollow, and now I'm wandering, trapped between this world and the next. They're coming for me. I hear their voices getting closer, whispering my name, reminding me of the price I paid. There's no escape. I died that night.
I never believed in PACTS, in invisible forces controlling our lives, until now. I live in London, the city where urban legends blend with reality at every corner, beneath the grey sky. The idea of making a pact had never crossed my mind, until my desperation pushed me into it. It all started on a Sunday at Borough Market. That day was especially difficult. The market was crowded, the sounds of people exploding in every direction, while I felt invisible, suffocated by the crowd. Walking between the stalls of spices, exotic fruits, and artisan breads left me in a trance, but the emptiness inside me grew with every step. I had just lost my job at a prestigious advertising agency, and the public humiliation of that failure was still etched into my skin. My savings were evaporating, debts were piling up, and the pressure was crushing me. Desperation led me to search for answers in the most improbable places. That's when I heard about an old legend. A few years ago, a colleague mentioned John Dee, the occultist from Queen Elizabeth I's court. He believed demonic forces control the world through pacts, invisible contracts that could grant power and success to anyone daring enough to sign. For some reason, it stuck in my head, and days later, during a sleepless night, I found a reference to an ancient conjuration circle John Dee had drawn in Green Park, right in the heart of London. They said he met with angels there, figures who gave people what they wanted, for a price. The impulse was stronger than my reason. I was obsessed with the idea of changing my life. I knew it was madness, but I decided to visit the park, just to see, that's all. After all, what did I have to lose? It was a cold night, like so many in London. The park was nearly empty, just shadows walking in the distance. The wind stirred the leaves, making an unsettling sound as I approached the old tree where Dee's circle had supposedly been traced. I knelt there, in the middle of an empty field, my heart racing, feeling a presence I couldn't explain. What happened next? I still can't fully understand. A voice emerged. Not a normal voice, but a feeling inside me, like something was whispering directly into my brain. "What do you desire?" it asked. And without thinking, I said, "I want my power back. I want them to see who I am." That's when everything changed. At first, it seemed like the pact had worked. I got a new job, much better than the previous one, at a multinational agency. Success came quickly, very quickly. People started to notice me, respect me, even fear me. Business meetings became arenas where I dominated everything, and that's what I had always wanted, wasn't it? But then things started to happen, things I couldn't explain. First, it was the eyes. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was being watched. On the tube, in Soho pubs, even in the agency's hallways. There was always someone or something following me with their gaze. I convinced myself it was paranoia, but it only got worse. Suddenly, lights would flicker when I entered a room, and the mirrors. No, I said I wouldn't talk about mirrors. It wasn't in the mirrors. It was in the shop windows I passed on Oxford Street. My reflection no longer belonged to me. I knew something was wrong when I woke up one night with marks on my hands. They looked like burns, but they were in a shape, like symbols. It wasn't possible that I had done that to myself. And then I remembered the voice. The price will be paid. I tried to escape. I sought help, but who would believe me? A successful woman with everything she had always wanted, begging for help against something invisible. I knew the pact was consuming something inside me, but I didn't know what to do. I went to the British Library, searching for books on John Dee, trying to understand how to undo what I had done. But every page I read made the feeling of being followed worse. Every time I tried to understand more, I felt the presence getting closer. One night, while walking home, I realized it. There was no escape. The street lights flickered, and the shadows seemed to swallow me as I crossed Millennium Bridge. There, in the middle of the bridge, I felt the presence materialize beside me. It was a figure without a face, without a clear form, just a black silhouette, darker than the darkness itself. The price will be paid, the voice repeated. I knew then that the pact hadn't been a mistake, it was a sentence. I wasn't trading power for success. I was trading my soul for something I would never fully understand. Now, I write this knowing it's my last act. The marks on my hands have spread across my body, and I know I don't have much time left. This thing, this entity, is with me at every moment, no matter where I go, no matter how much I fight. The pact is sealed. What did I really want? Not even I know anymore. All that's left of me is emptiness.